second or within 1 or 2, 3 seconds. Probably it's up to the data speed. It can provide whatever you want within a second. Even it can provide a translation from the endangered language to the present language. Personalized learning with AI. AI creates tailored learning experiences to meet individual needs. This particular individual needs is started from the give importance to the learning of the mother tongue where we come from. Give importance to the learning of the mother tongue of the indigenous community where we belong to. Examples of AI utilization and tools, exploring AI role in preserving languages and culture. It is an interactive learning. AI chatbots and apps engage users for language learning and practice. It's a second part. First, we need to preserve language, and then we need to do a documentation. After the documentation, we need to make the language to be globalized, that our language has a more traditional values, more cultural values, more, it is almost like a consider my language as being a part of one of the supreme language in the world. The translation tools, AI-driven translation bridge gaps between the languages and enhancing communication, which is a part called translanguaging. Like there is a research which was done by me. I use a set of students who are non-tribal students, make them to learn tribal students from the tribe. In the other hand, I make the tribal students, I mean, I use the tribal students to learn English. It's a part of research and the term called translanguaging. They have to use English and tribal languages to learn. The one part of the students will learn English, the other part of the students will learn tribal languages. The process called translanguaging. In that process, the students are able to learn a 5 to 10 sentence within within a 1 hour session. It makes them to learn approximately 100 sentence within 6 to 7 days because of the passionate that they have towards the languages. And one more thing, when it comes to documentation, we don't have a set of traditional methods to be engaged in documentation. Why means it requires a lot of manpower, but when it comes to AI, documentation process will be more feasible, more easier, and we can document all the tribal languages, and we can even own the patents for the tribal languages to make our further generation, our future generation, to enhance the continuous learning process of our own mother tongue, especially our own indigenous mother tongue. And one more thing, you may have a question. While using AI, is there any problem that it may lead to? When it comes to AI, we are going to provide the algorithms. Algorithms won't like, trust me, algorithms literally don't like. When we provide a proper algorithm, it will make the language to be preserved and to be documented and to be saved. And there is a one more software which I am currently working on, speech recognition software. I mean, on my one hand, I'll have an English language. On my other hand, I have a let's take an example of Santal language. It's almost like a Google Translate, but it's quite different from the Google Translate. On the same time, when a person from the Santal community says something in Santal language, it will appear with the fonts in the Santal language, and it will also appear in the fonts of the English language. It is a bilingual preservation of process. So these are all some of the real world applications where we can use to preserve language. The project ELSA, this is one of the project which is being highlighting by me, because this project is really an eye-opener for me. Utilize AI to teach endangered languages via mobile applications, enhancing accessibility and learning. This is mainly from the like, how can I say, from the mainstream, from the indigenous community to reach the mainstream society, that you can learn our language. Instead of you're forcing to learn your language to us, why don't you learn our language and know our values and traditions, a set of the beliefs and norms which we follow in our life. The Living Tongue Institute, which is also another method, employs AI for the documentation and revitalization, in revitalizing indigenous languages and creating valuable resources for the learners. And one more thing, when it comes to integrating AI to preserve indigenous languages, it increased engagement. AI integration has led to heightened the interest and participation in language learning initiatives, and it has a successful documentation process also. Projects have successfully documented languages that were previously undocumented, preserving cultural heritage. Almost, I take up 50 words from the when it comes to my research. I just take up 50 not words, 50 sentences from the whole language. I just using the NLP, Natural Language Processing, to convert those 50 sentences from whole to English. I use the particular technique called a particular software called Natural Language Processing, which makes me to learn how, with the context, with the meaning, with the cultural values, the source language of English, which is really I really being feel happy that something that I can do for the indigenous community to learn the languages, to know their cultures, at the same time to preserve the languages as well as document the languages. There are certain barriers to implementation and addressing challenges. There is a set of resource limitation. Many tribal communities lack access to necessary technologies, hindering AI integration. It is up to our hands. Those who really want passionate about to preserve those languages, you just take up a call to action that today itself I'm going to learn AI, I'm going to learn NLP, I'm going to learn Alice technology to preserve my own community language. I'm doing not for my own sake, I'm doing it for my future generation so they can learn the values. And most important things, if you're being a non-tribal or non-indigenous member, when it comes to enter into the community, please be respect their values and the norms and the practice that they have been followed over a period of years, which is really in the second point. AI tools must be developed with the deep respect of the cultural context of the tribal languages. And there is a data availability. Limited data of the many tribal languages present a significant barrier to developing effective AI models. Who is going to work for a for a AI or for a technologies oriented jobs? Just take this as a point and try to engage, try to create a module or software or algorithms which is going to really helpful for the our own indigenous people. And you know, it is not the easiest task to preserve all those languages. It really requires a collaboration and community engagement. Create a community within your community and just do a progress 1 or 2 days in a week. Trust me, it will gradually save your language for the future generation. So these are all the preserving tribal languages through technology. What are all the important points? Cultural signification of the tribal languages. Tribal languages are vital for maintaining cultural diversity and individual identity. Remember, one who forgot his language, he will soon forget his identity. One who forgot his identity, he will soon forgotten by his own motherland. One who forgot his motherland, he will become a refugee in this entire world. The innovative AI opportunities. AI offers a new methods for the preservation and revitalization of the tribal languages, as which I was shared in the previous slide. There are two more points. So my last slide, which is going to really I want to take, I want to tell and I want to be engaged with empowering tribal languages with AI technology. Act now to integrate artificial intelligence into preserve the tribal languages, ensuring cultural heritage thrives for the future generation. In order to one more information, I'm a novelist. Soon I'm going to publish my fourth language. In that particular language, what I am trying to do means that particular language, that particular novel, I'm planning to publish in 10 different languages. So out of 10 different languages, I took 5 tribal languages which are in endangered positions, which is being a traditional positions, but we need to give some literature values to our languages so that The mainstream society cannot take away our language from our hands. As being a youngster, we have a gadgets techies in our hands. We have been roaming all the social media platforms. My request is to use the social media platform as well as AI to save our own languages. And thank you for the opportunity. And I would like to thank for the Jojo Funk, the international chaplain of IMCS, and Bertha Sambudu, IMCS Asia Pacific coordinator, and Supriya Lama, the moderator of today's sessions. Thank you. I think I'm quite finished within the time.
Thank you, Xavier, for your insightful session. And thank you for enlightening the importance of preserving our tribal or indigenous languages and highlighting the role of AI in language preservation. Your expertise has provided us with a deeper understanding of how technology can be a powerful ally in safeguarding indigenous languages. Just control AI as your tool, not as your master. Moving on, now I would like to call our second speaker, an inspiring voice from Indonesia, Michaeline Salata. She is an indigenous youth climate activist who has been at the forefront of advocating for indigenous rights, environmental justice, and cultural preservation. We can't wait to hear your insights, Miss. So it's over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I hope I'm audible. If I'm not audible, please let me know because I'm currently in the indigenous community with a very limited access to internet. So I can just turn off my camera and then I can present. First of all, I would like to thank IMCS Asia Pacific for this opportunity given to me. It's really nice to be celebrating the International Mother's Day, Mother's Language Day today with all of you. And I would like to share a little bit of my experience in the field of preserving traditional knowledge that is including our mother language in the context of Indonesia, and as well as some personal experience that I have undergone for the past years. So I hope that you can see my presentation. Is it visible for everyone? Okay, great. So I know that some of you already mentioned your mother language in the previous introduction, so we don't have to do this at the moment. But if you want to, you can just type what is your mother language, what it is called based on your origin or your indigenous community. So me, myself, my mother language is Toraya, but called it Toraja. So basically, it's pronounced differently from where I am from. My second language would be Bahasa Indonesia, and my third language is English, another foreign language that I'm learning. So here is some context that I would like to share to everyone that is our mother language, is our first language. So is that the same, or has anybody experienced the same thing, like considering their mother language as their first language? For me, at first, when I grew up, I was very confused because sometimes I always consider Bahasa Indonesia is my first language. But my conversation and my communication at home always being practiced from Toraya, the indigenous language where I grew up with. So this is the context. Mother language can be our native language, wherever we are coming from in our indigenous community or our tribe. But however, some people's mother language are their national language. For example, some of my friends who grew up in a very big cities in Indonesia, they will not know their indigenous language because they always speak in Bahasa. So Bahasa Indonesia is their first language, while their indigenous knowledge is not their first or even the second or third. It will be their secondary or tertiary language. And then first language is mother language or your national language. So this is applies to some nationals with diverse linguistic condition, especially in Indonesia. And then I will just check the, okay. Thank you so much. It's really nice to see the chats popping on. It means that everyone is very excited for the session. And then also we have second language. So some countries who are familiar with the terms English as a second language or English as a foreign language means that they are learning English not as their first language, right? But some places also consider their national language as second or foreign language because they always glorify and use their indigenous language in their everyday life, especially in the indigenous communities. And the last point is about cultural and social clashes. So we have differences in values and in how we are considering and practicing our indigenous knowledge. But it can also lead to misunderstandings and confusions. Like when I was growing up, I was confused whether Bahasa or Toraya is my first language. Now I know because it is on how I perceive it and how I practice it in my daily life. So let's see the context of Indonesia. In Indonesia, we have 718 mother languages from different tribes and also ethnicities. And you might be surprised that Papua has more than 400 mother languages. So we can see that Papua is a big place, it's a big island, but moving from one region to another, they will speak different languages. We have ranked this based on the data provided by the government, especially the Ministry of Education and Culture, where Maluku is in the second place, is Nusa Tenggara, which is close to Timor-Leste, is in the third place. Sulawesi, where I'm from, is the fourth place. Sumatra, where some of you might come from, is on the fifth place. Kalimantan is on the sixth, and Java and Bali is on the seventh. So surprisingly, Java, which is the most populated island, has less mother languages because they have a lot of big cities with a lot of modernization, and that is why it is very complex for the people there to practice or speak their indigenous languages. Okay, so from this, I would like to say that using more and more of our mother language in everyday lives will ensure that our mother language will never go extinct. And in another point is that in Indonesia, we also practice writing script. So we call it Aksara script, which is some of them are Sanskrit, which is similar to our friends in India, Nepal, and some other countries as well. Aksara or script is very important in preserving our indigenous language. But not all of the mother languages in Indonesia have this script. Only certain region like Batak, Rejang, in my island is Bugis Makassar, while in Kalimantan only people from Banjar, the Dayak people who are the biggest tribe in Kalimantan doesn't have the script. So it is a very hard work to preserve this language because they are only orally preserved, not writtenly preserved like script. But as time goes by, we face a lot of modernization and digitalization. That's why a script is also being digitalized nowadays. We have an application that we can access in our phones in order to learn about the script. And then it's also taught at schools, and some schools teach it mandatory for the students in order for them to learn and it doesn't go extinct. So from this, how mother language is significant for the IP's identity, for our identity as an indigenous people. So indigenous people's identity, from the perspective of AMAN, the National Organization for Indigenous People in Indonesia, one of them is the third point, cultural and social identity, and as well as rights for struggle and recognition. So it doesn't mean that these two are the most important characteristic of indigenous peoples, but these two are related to indigenous knowledge. Without indigenous knowledge, we cannot identify ourselves as an indigenous peoples because we actually have this as our asset, right? Our language is our asset. Just like our land, when we are being displaced or when we are being criminalized for protecting our lands, it means that we are being hampered from accessing our rights. So is the language. And we can say that from the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, it has been mandated in Article 13 to 14 that we have to revitalize indigenous languages. And this has been instructed to every country that mandate this UN DRIP in their country to revitalize the indigenous language. That's why in Indonesia, we have MULOC, Muatan Lokal, or local content as our access to these indigenous languages. Take an example from my personal experience. I stopped formally access the indigenous language content back in junior high school, because after that the national curriculum has changed from the national government, that it actually gives less opportunity for the young generations to learn indigenous language. Now, I would like to share to us, even though this is not from my community, but I visited New Zealand 2 years ago, which I learned about Te Reo Maori. Te Reo Maori is the national language or the indigenous language of people, Maori people in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in which they faced a colonization towards their language itself. So apart from the land access, they also have difficulties in accessing their rights to their languages. And we can see this case is actually interesting, because when they were colonized, on when the British colony settled in New Zealand, they changed the name from Aotearoa, they changed it to New Zealand, and then they also have this Schools Act that hampers the Maori to speak Maori language. They are only enforced to speak English, and then they will be punished if they speak Maori language. But in 1953, we can see that the number of people who speaks Maori, especially the school children, has been dropped 26% and 64% in total in 40 years. So this is somehow makes indigenous peoples there worried, and they started to make a movement. So what kind of movement is that they are making is that they are making a petition. This petition is called Te Petihana Reo Maori. So the Maori language petition is actually started in 1970s. So imagine they are being colonized for more than 100 years. More than 100 years also they were not able to speak their language freely. And then they started this movement to send a petition to the parliament, and then the parliament evaluate the petition again and again, doing a hearing, doing a consolidation with the indigenous peoples between the Pakeha. Pakeha is the non-Maori people. And then in 1972, the petition had received over 30,000 signatures, and it was finally in 1986 that this Te Reo Maori being legally recognized as an official language in New Zealand under the Maori Language Act, which took effect 1st of August. But it was not only like a smooth way of them. Even up until now, Te Reo Maori is still being advocated in New Zealand, especially now. For example, like you can see, if you visit New Zealand, you will see the name of the street has two names, the English name and the Maori name. And also like some offices or some places has two names, the English name and the Maori name, in order to equalize the English and the Maori languages there. So one message that I could take in light of the first presentation and this sharing is that in the midst of modernization, we should be proud as an indigenous generation to speak our indigenous languages. So it is not only today that we are celebrating it, because we have to remember that protecting our indigenous language, it means that we protect our rights, we protect our dignity as an indigenous generation of our communities. So I would like to thank the IMCS Asia Pacific for this opportunity, and hopefully we can share more on the question and discussion sessions. Thank you, everyone. Kure sumanga. Salamat lako kita solanasang.
Thank you, Salata. We really appreciate your powerful insights. Your words have been both inspiring and empowering. And thank you so much for highlighting how mother language is significant for our identity, and along with the case history, you have like clearly mentioned about how our mother language play a significant role in like uh, doing petitions and bringing social change in the country we live in. Thank you so much for this. Now, moving on, we have our Q&A session for panel discussion. So, we will now dedicate this time to a panel discussion. So, if you have any questions or personal experiences related to language, please feel free to raise your hand to join the conversation and share your thoughts. And also, you can drop your questions in the chat box.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello everyone, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you for the two speakers that have a very insightful and innovative presentation. So I would like to ask a question for Robinson. So this really innovative tools, innovative ways to avoid the language loss, to avoid the language extinct. So mostly indigenous people is avoid the technology. So I have seen so many indigenous community in Indonesia, even though the government cannot reach out them to make it modernized. So based on your tools, your technology, uh, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see this really useful to the outsider. I mean, the outsider from the community inside. So is it really useful to the community inside? I mean, not only to keep sustainable the language, to keep the language to keep exist. But in terms to the people inside the community, it's real. Do they will be effect on this? Do they will be uh, want to involve to this methodology, this innovative solution? Are do you feel like or how you will be engage the people inside to to them to one get involved? I mean, so based on my experience, I mean, they don't want to adapt the technology. Do you sure that you can reach out them? Okay, this is my innovation. They will accept this, and that's the first and the second. Yeah, the first I said that is this tools meant for them or just outside the people. And then for the Michelin, it's really wonderful. Yeah, you said you have a many experience, especially in New York. That's a really excellent like experience. So, what do you think in terms of the how to connect the language, mother language, and then in terms of the digital era, how we what are the simple ways like to blend this indigenous idea with new digital tools? How we can help these communities shape how to make it like connect the do you have experience like how to blend the indigenous idea with the new digital tools like Robinson? did. So that's all. Thank you.
Michelle, would you like to answer first or may I?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, Lucia, yeah, yeah, Lucia. You know, I'm in India. I'm from the extent south, which is the state called Tamil Nadu. In that state, I've been lived to the village called Pudukkottai Manamalgudi, which doesn't have a access of a public transportation. Only 4 times we are able to access the transportation to reach the main city. But my research is completely opposite, which is being a north of the India, I mean northeast border of the India, which you maybe know Jharkhand. In Jharkhand, there are main tribes as well as primitive and vulnerable tribes. So what I have done is I was a former national full-timer of a movement called All India Catholic University Federation. So in that context, I know set of a priest who has really working for the youths. Based on the contact and the connection I reached to the place, I done a pilot study almost for 2 months to visit most of the primitive tribes as well as the main tribes. So when I enter into community, if I be entered by my own, I cannot able to access, cannot able to speak because my part of place we use Tamil as the mother tongue as well as English as the second language. When it comes to the Jharkhand, the tribal mother tongue is their first language, and the state governing language is the second language, and Hindi will be the third language, and English will be the fourth language. So I hire translators. I ask help from the fathers. If they are free, ask them to come out with me. It is, I mean, it's not only out of my interest, it is the real interest that they have to develop and empower the tribal students as well as to preserve and safeguard the tribal languages, the indigenous languages. In one word, it is called a set of community engagement work. I cannot enter in by my own self. Initially, when it comes to integrating AI, it has been a tough task. I've been facing many problems like network issues. How can I collect data? How can I preserve data? Because almost I was in the untouched area of the human peoples, I mean mainstream societies, where I need to walk 2 or 3 miles in the hills to reach the peoples. Initially, I understand that the people's really required for education. I have seen many of the dropouts from the school level as well as many of the dropouts from the college level. So we just made a mission that one particular Jesuit group has done a missionary work that they provide a free education for the primitive tribes, for the hostel, for the school, for the college. Everything is completely free. Through them, I'm able to access their village. Through them, I'm able to done this research. Through them, I'm able to conduct my another research. Through them, I'm able to translate my novels into their language. I mean, my research is set off of modernized ideas as well as traditional ideas. So in that context, I don't want to make the tribal or indigenous students to forget their mother tongue. My concern is to learn other languages from their own mother tongue context. It is the importance to preserve and safeguard their own mother tongue. That's how I done my research, and it really takes a lot of physical strains, mental strains, and stress, everything. But once I seen the result that I'm able to make the students to learn something in English at the same time, I'm able to make the students to preserve some concern towards the preserving the mother language. It really makes me more happy. It's not a happy, it's a joyous feeling, or I don't know the exact synonyms. At that moment, what I really feel is like to see my own son to to achieve something. That's how it feels really. This is what I have done. And for me, it's not a toughest task. I really like to do many more things. Hope I have answered your question, Lucia.
I get you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I see questions in the chat box as well. Could any speakers can like answer these questions? I would request anyone to answer these questions from Inda and from Maya something. If I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Yeah.
I think I would like to answer the questions from Lucia. They're oh wait, my baby is crying. Wait guys.
Let me answer instead of Michelin.
Yeah, sure, go Vincent, yeah.
How do we bridge the gaps between ancestral wisdom practiced by elderly peoples and new generational challenges procreated by the advanced technology? How do we balance them? Especially, how do we convince the new generation who are not interested in practicing ancestral way of living, traditional promotions of ancestral cultures? Literally, I have been facing this particular challenge when I was in the particular tribe called Achus. So the modernity, it's almost like infused something which which really not been a practice for over of decades by the old and ancestral generations. Suddenly, it's like a come quickly and take away all the traditions and put a new form of traditions, put a new ideology and make the practice. It's really it cannot be possible. Why it cannot be possible in that context? Um, I think in that question, it's don't need to convince your new generation. See, until or unless the feel from the heart, the feel from which is connected towards the emotion that though we learn set of languages for our empowerment, that our mother languages has the values and the real touching emotions within our heart. You may you may watch set of movies from all the languages because of the advent of the Prime Netflix, but when it comes to your mother tongue, watching movie in your mother tongue, it really makes you cry until and unless the language affects your emotions. That's what I see. The new generation, what they forgot, they literally forgot the advent of the modernization. They forgot the traditional roots where we carried from. My suggestion is if you're being in one particular place, go explore the world, but don't forget the place where you come from. If you forget the place where you come from, it is the starting point of the your motherland is dying or your mother language is dying because of you. Hope I have answered. I forgot to see the name. Suman Gail. Over to Michelin.
Hello, Michaelin. Are you there?
Yes.
I think.
Am I audible? Yeah, I think that this is going to answer some questions that are similar from the chat room. I think when it comes to preserving our indigenous language, it is really a challenge at nowadays situations because at first left out that is a very typical situation in Indonesia. I left my hometown a couple of times just to access a better education, a better access for jobs. And when that time comes, I did not get to speak my mother language. And when I came back again to my indigenous community, I would be very confused when it comes to talking to elders because there are a certain level of languages that you cannot use to elders. And these type of languages are not being taught at school. You have to acquire it by actually socializing with them, by acquiring it through communicating directly from them to them. So this is actually a challenge. In order for us to preserve our mother language is not only learning it, but we have to go back to our community. That is, we have to go back to where we are from. For example, if you are from Batak, I have so many Batak friends everywhere. Like Batak is one of the most populating tribe in every island in Indonesia, but not all Batak people can speak Batak language in a very thick Bahasa Batak itself. Because when you want to speak Batak language, you have to visit the place in Sumatra, North Sumatra, where people actually speak Bahasa Batak all the time. They don't even speak Bahasa Indonesia or even English. And that is where you can reacquire the language itself. That is one practical thing. When it comes to our identity as an indigenous generation, I started a school. It's called Sekolah Adat, which means in English, indigenous school. So this indigenous school started in 2020 when COVID struck everybody in the world. So Sekolah Adat actually comes as a savior to the children who are being home. They are forced to study from home, and then they have to report to the school through Facebook Messenger. So we had that realization as a youth that we cannot force our children to do this because they are not exposed to enough technology just yet. So instead of forcing them to understand technology, why don't we reroute? We go back to our roots and teach them what we have left in the middle, especially younger generations than me. So at that time, we started this indigenous school. And now all over Indonesia, we have more than 100 indigenous schools already, because it started from that a couple of indigenous school seats in Indonesia. So the initiative started not only to preserve the language, but it also the contextual situation in our indigenous communities. We started to figure out how to preserve in traditional traditional herbs, traditional medical practices that is still being practiced by our elders. Even though some of them against the religion that is commonly being believed by the people in Indonesia, but we just take some good part of it that we could teach, and then some of them who have the skills to write that into a book, they produce it into a book. So basically, we don't want this traditional knowledge, this language to just being orally transferred to our next generation, but we have to document it. So we have the documentations on hand at the moment. It was a struggle when we started it because we had to, like collecting pieces or collecting puzzles, and then we have to produce it into a book. But now the books are ready, so the schools is quite settled where they can learn from the books that we have created in 2020, back then when the COVID strikes. So basically, it's some initiative that we can actually copy, not really copy, but we can make it similar to our communities. And I know back to the Batak people context that I mentioned before. Some of my friends, also from Toraja, where I'm from, they are Torajanese, but they cannot speak Bahasa Toraja anymore because they live in another place now. But they are very proud of who they are, even though they cannot speak the language. So I think that the appreciation comes from the identity itself. When we love our identity, when we appreciate and respect our ancestors who have given us this identity, we can go back to that, even though that it takes some time for us to realize this type of struggle that we have. Because talking about indigenous people struggle, it's very complex. We talk about this traditional knowledge, language, let alone we have more about land rights. So it's all interconnected. It's just about the time where we want to start the change itself. I think that would answer some of the questions. Yeah.
So that will be your question. How do church or any other religious institutions see the spirituality of IPS, and what are the key insights non-IPS can get from the indigenous way of living? So I would like to answer this question because in India, when it comes to northeast part, as well as some of the places in my places, there is a very limited set of indigenous peoples. When it comes to northeast as well as the north, uh, especially Gujarat, Jharkhand, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh. Initially, those tribes used to follow the culture called Sarna culture. Sarna, which is means worship of the god. After the advent of the Belgian missionaries, the main missionary place is called Chota Nagpur. So the Belgian missionaries, they convert all the tribals into Christians, especially all the indigenous peoples into Christians. But what is the beauty in that? Though they have been converted, they follow Christ as their savior, they still practice and infuse the methodology called Christianity and Sarna culture based on those mixed mixed type of practices. They do worship the nature, they do worship the Christ also. So which is being really an advanced mode of infused culture that made them provide opportunities in the level of higher education, as well as they don't forget where they belongs to. If I ask any one of the students from the Jharkhand context, they usually share that we belongs to Sarna culture, but we respect Christ also. Why they have respected? We have been faced this discrimination, this alienation for over a decade of over a generation. But this particular missionaries came here and tried to change our way of life in the sense, way of life to reach a higher institutions, higher education institutions, to get global opportunities. You know, all these places where I mentioned, only a tribal or indigenous fathers or priest are working for them. It's like they create a community. Then the community started working for the community, of the community, and by the community. Now it's been called as the community engagement program to preserve their own community, to provide spaces for the community. When it comes to non-IPS, literally I'm also a non-IPS, but I was really fascinated to work for the indigenous communities. Why means, according to my ideology or philosophy, whatever it is, my education is not only for me. The ultimate purpose of my education or my research or whatever I have done, it's literally for the people who has been put in the place called marginalized. In one words, my motto or my ideology of the life is for voice for the voiceless and marching with the marginalized. That's how I have seen that I'm really fascinating and overwhelming to be work for the indigenous people, which they can provide the true love. What can I say after the true love? They really provide consider me as one of their homes. That's how really what I feel.
I think I want to add to that. I already entered it in the chat box, but I hope that I can add more about that. Some culture in Indonesia actually assimilate culture and the teaching of Christianity. For example, at church, we do our sermons and we do our prayers in our mother language. We even have our own Bible in our mother language as well, because there is this program from the United States where they want to translate the Bible into almost all the mother languages in Indonesia, which I know it very hard, but they are doing it, and the community is actually welcome. They are very welcoming when it comes to translating the teachings of Christianity into the mother language itself. So I think that the church has as contributing in preserving the mother language itself. I attended one service before in Hakabete in the Batak church in North Sumatra, and they use entirely mother language in their service. Even the prayer, I only heard one word, one sentence in Bahasa Indonesia at that time, which means God bless you, and the rest of it is very contextualized, and they preserve the culture more on that part because they don't want to lose their identity while at the same time maintaining their faith. So I think that is one a positive thing. But when it comes to teachings, the church is quite how to say it. I want to say it in English, but I can't. They are quite picky. They don't want to assimilate the teachings. They want to assimilate the culture, the attire, the language, the practices in daily life, but the teachings when it comes to like for example, like in my culture, we have an old religion called Aluk Todolo in which we do we worship the trees, we worship the grapes, we worship the ancestors' spirits. But in Christianity, we are not encouraged to do that. So somehow there is a bargaining um, between culture, between the tribe and the church. So I think that we can see how culture and church is actually can be coexisting at the same time, based on my experience from where I am from.
A big thank you to our speakers and participants for your invaluable insights and engagement. I, on the behalf of organizing team, would like to apologize for not being able to address all the questions due to time constraint. So, however, we encourage you to send your queries to our mail, IMCS Asia Pacific mail ID, and our speakers will be glad to address them at their earliest convenience. As we come to the end of this enriching conversation, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to our incredible speakers, our participants, and IMCS Asia Pacific for making this dialogue possible. Now, indigenous languages are more than just words. They are our resilience, our identity, and we should speak our mother tongue. We honor those who came before us and empower those who will come after us. So, documentation is really necessary to preserve our rich and unique identity. Our voices must not be silenced. Our language must not disappear. So let's take this discussion beyond today, and let's speak, teach, and advocate our language before it's too late. Not And at the end, I want to thank all of the participants and all the speakers for being here. And let's continue to protect and celebrate our voices of heritage. Once again, Happy International Mother Day 2025 to you all. Now, I would like to call Mr. Suman Gole, coordinator of IMCS Asia, to share a few words before we wrap up the session.
Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight, especially our distinguished speakers for your insights, for your time here with us, Robinson and Salata here being with us. So Indigenous Day is really special for us because that's the time there where we celebrate our language, our identity, and all the traditions that is coming up with us, through our ancestral boundary and everything. So it's also important for us to reflect what are we doing in order to preserve the culture, preserve the traditions, the cultural values that has been passed out to us by our ancestors and how we are going to promote it. So that's also very much important for us to reflect on this particular day as we are celebrating International Mother Tongue Language Day today. So I just want to express my deepest gratitude towards all the participants as well for your time, for your insight, for all the reflections that you had shared with us in the chat box and many other things. So we are very much hopeful that we will have more and more sessions like this. So we will have more and more voices from our indigenous speakers and those speakers, those people who are really working for the well-being of indigenous people around the globe. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. So I just want to thank our moderator, Supriya Lama, and all the entire team who were behind the stage for working very hard in order to make this webinar a successful one. So thank you everyone for joining your hands together. Thank you for joining here with us tonight. Okay, so before we just close this session, close this webinar, can I request all of you please turn on your camera that we can have a group photo before we leave. Okay, we have some more people. Okay, if possible, Maya, Vaisha, okay. Okay, ready everyone? Those who cannot turn on your videos, you can just send some like thumbs up or love reaction or anything that is like preferable for you. Okay, ready everyone? 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again in other sessions.
தான் அது கையை குடிச்சிட்டு இருக்கவங்க அது இந்த இது அந்த மாதிரி நீட்டிட்டு இருக்கல அது